Hi everyone, Teddy Baldassarre here. I'm in the Grand Seiko booth with Joe Kirk, the National Training Director for Grand Seiko, right? Is that, you get that right?
Actually, I've had a title change since then.
What's the title change?
So my title is currently Brand Curator.
Brand Curator. They should just call you Mr. Grand Seiko, because you're a wealth of knowledge, you're always great to talk to, and it's great to finally meet.
It's my pleasure. Thank you. We've been communicating for quite a while now, and nice to put the name to the face, right?
It's wonderful. So we have some great new pieces. I wanted to take the time to just walk through what is new from Grand Seiko this year.
Yeah.
I have a lot of, my eyes are going everywhere, so do you want to just maybe walk us through some of the novelties and kind of guide us through what's new for 2022?
Yeah, so first and foremost, this is our new Evolution 9 collection. And so Evolution 9 started with the white birch, as we released in 2021, beginning of 2021. We made it officially a collection as of February 2022, when we introduced the spring drive version. And now Evolution 9 is evolving. So we have a more dedicated sports line within Evolution 9 that we're featuring first a chronograph, GMT, with bidirectional sapphire bezel for a third option time zone, which is the first time actually for spring drive chronograph GMT to have that. It's in high intensity titanium, and actually all of these models you're going to see are high intensity titanium, which is about 30% lighter than stainless steel. It's actually higher hardness slightly, and has a higher corrosion resistance. So great material overall. And so the spring drive chronograph, we're going to introduce a new dial color called Cosmo Blue, which is this. This will be limited to 700 pieces, and we'll have our specially adjusted 9R96 caliber. So it's accurate within guarantee of plus or minus half a second per day.
So up from the typical 9R65 and 66, that's 1 second.
Correct, yes. So, and then we will have a continuing production model in black dial with black bezel. That is the 9R86 spring drive chronograph with also 1 second per day.
So, new diver.
Yeah,
that's big news this year.
This is one of my favorites. I'm not a big dive watch guy actually, and I know everyone loves divers, but I'm always kind of more just clean, pure time only, right? This diver, I feel, is a great expression of Grand Seiko. One, because we have this new dial pattern. A lot of people, our Omi Watari, right? So the Omi Watari has this beautiful dial pattern that looks like the lake in Suwa right near our studio. This has a new dial pattern. People are going to think it's the same, but this dial is actually inspired by Ushio, or tide, and more specifically Kuroshio current, which is known as the Black Stream, feeding into the Atlantic North Pacific. So the Kuroshio, or the Black Stream, as we say in English, right? The dial concept, we had to create something more unique, and it's not a lake, right? It's not calm. This is a very aggressive stream, so we had a very aggressive dial pattern. So there's actually more waves in this dial than what you would see with the Omi Watari as an example. So
beautiful. 43, correct?
43.8.
Okay.
Another thing that people are going to love is we finally introduced a ceramic bezel insert into a Grand Seiko diver. We've done full ceramic bezels and case sides, and we use ceramic to an extent, but we've never done a diver's insert because they generally are thinner and have high potential to break or fracture. Thanks to new design, we're able to implement a highly durable ceramic bezel insert into this particular diver.
I have to ask, because I know people want me to ask, what is the future for dive watches, and is there flexibility with the 9R A5 in here to shrink it down into a smaller case?
So then
are there limitations?
Yeah, there's limitations, of course. 9R A5 is a thin caliber, so it's 15% thinner than 9R65 as an example, right? So it is wider though.
What's the dimension? Do you know what the dimension is?
Not off the top of my head, but it is wider, probably approximately by like under a millimeter, I believe. But as you see with the regular, Grand Seiko divers, our like 200-meter divers, let's say, at 44.2. This is a reduction in size, even though it's very minimal. But you also have an increase in power reserve from 3 days to 5 days. You have an increase in accuracy from the plus or minus 1 second per day to half a second per day. And basically you're getting more in a slightly smaller package. Also, I always would like to emphasize the fact that Grand Seiko is ultimately made to be practical. right? A dive watch is made to be a tool, and we want to make it as durable and rugged as we possibly can. So when we're designing these watches, it's not just the the movement diameter, which is a big contributing factor to the size, but also the way we design the bezel. We make it very easy to service. Sometimes we need to increase the size of certain components in order to make it easier to service, because the bezel gets gunk in it. You have to clean it regularly. So that, along with the crown, those are the 2 points that most frequently need service in dive watches, because they're constantly getting wet and then have sand or mud or something along those lines stuck in them. You want it to be easy to take apart. On top of that, whether it's 200 meters up all the way up to 600 meters you've seen in Grand Seiko, we never use helium escape. So we use these very thick L-shaped gaskets that make it impervious to air penetrating the watch. Not just water, but air and gas. So this is, something that increases the size as well.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of factors. And this, actually, the sapphire crystal, you'd be surprised how thick the sapphire on this is. It's probably close to maybe between 5 and 6 millimeters off the top of my head.
Wait, really?
And it's only 200-meter dive watch. It doesn't appear this way.
This has certainly some treatment, because AR coating, correct? I mean, it has to.
Inside.
Yeah, yeah, it looks, because you can't even see the crystal.
Yeah, exactly.
But that's big news. Honestly, though, talking about my favorite,
yeah,
I think it's the GMTs. These 283, 285.
They're a great size at 41 millimeters, so they're smaller than the 45.3 millimeter chronograph and 43.8 millimeter diver. At 41, it's the same size as the Snowflake. The dial space is a little smaller because it's a GMT and has
the bezel,
a chapter
dial
ring.
ratio.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Exactly.
No, this wears like a dream. This is fantastic.
So we have a new interpretation of the Snowflake pattern in a light gray, which is inspired by the morning mist surrounding the Hotaka mountain range right near our studio in Shinshu in central Japan. So this is also a wintertime expression, but when you compare it to the Snowflake as an example, this is pure white.
Two watches on. He's coming prepared.
I gotta show love for both of our manufacturers.
I love it. That's great.
Yeah.
But no, this is fantastic. Under 14 millimeters in thickness, right?
Yes. And it does include the box-shaped sapphire crystal, so that's it doesn't
just
wear
under
thick. 2 millimeters of height.
Doesn't wear thick. This is fantastic. I love seeing a 41 in a sports watch from you guys. This is amazing.
Thank you. Yeah, we do a lot in the 43 plus range in our sports watches, so we are starting to introduce more in smaller segments. But of course, we don't want to compromise durability or rigidity, just for the sake of reducing size.
And really quick, we didn't talk price, so this is right north of $8,000, right?
Yeah, $8,400 on the two GMTs, whether it's the black dial or the light gray Snowflake. We have $12,400 for the limited edition chronograph because it has the higher accuracy caliber. The production model of the chronograph will be $11,400, and then the new 9R-A5, which is going to be a step up because of this new caliber. And this is actually the first continuing production model to use this movement. We only did a limited edition with it in 2020.
Diver.
So this is going to be $11,600. And so all of these, keep that Evolution 9 theme going. The concept of Grand Seiko style that we established with the 44GS in 1967, that set the standard for all Grand Seiko watches in terms of design moving forward. Evolution 9 acknowledges that and respects it, but also evolves from that. So we wanted to make it better in every single way. So the markers are enhanced, more faceted, and easier to read. Same with the hands. Easier to read, more distinguished between hours and minutes. And the cases, I absolutely love how all of the edges are, crisp, clean, ultra flat, but all have these multiple planes intersecting into one new plane where they all kind of meet together at the lug, as well as on the crown protector. So,
that's nice.
Yeah, that's one of my favorite elements. And even when you look at the bezel, like a 44GS has the 2 planes.
Yes.
This has 4. So double the work in Zaratsu polishing. There's a lot more work that will go into a case design like this.
So before we close here, the big talk around Watches and Wonders, or at least I would say one of the bigger talks, is your new Constant-Force Tourbillon that you released.
Yeah, that's my favorite.
Okay,
I'm so excited.
Well, that's in a different tier. That needs to be appreciated on a different level because we're talking a different ballpark of price, but also in terms of what you were able to accomplish with that. Could you give us the backstory of that? Because I heard, is this the extension of that concept watch that you released a couple years ago, now bringing it into production, correct?
Exactly. So the whole thing started actually in 2012.
That's crazy.
Yeah,
that's a decade. Yeah.
That is a decade of work that's gone into making this creation. And so we have this wonderful engineer and designer. His name is Takuma Kawachiya. Mr. Kawachiya had this idea of basically making a tourbillon with a constant force mechanism, which has been done before, but he wanted to integrate them fully and keep them all in the same inline axis. So that had not been done before. So he took basically parts from 9S65 caliber, which you can buy in $4,300 watch, let's say, roughly to start. He took parts from that and then built, fabricated his own to create the first prototype, which we have actually here on display at Watches and Wonders. And so that prototype, 8 years later, evolved into what we call the T0. And T0 was Grand Seiko's first concept creation. So we announced something before we had a commercial product, which Grand Seiko had never done before. The T0 was met with such high regard. We literally had people calling us asking how to buy what was just a movement. No case, no dial, no nothing. And so, behind the scenes, we're trying to figure out how do we commercialize this? How do we turn this into a sellable product? Obviously, this is not going to be a high-scale item. Right.
Like production, I heard from somebody else, we're talking maybe in the next 3 years, 20 pieces being made, is that correct?
Yeah, approximately.
Okay.
And
yes.
So 20 pieces will be the limited run. So we will make 20 pieces. In this production, you have to keep in mind everything is assembled by one watchmaker, 340 components, and part of the beauty of tourbillons in general is the delicacy in assembly. And so this being constant force integrated into the tourbillon.
And could you talk quickly for those that maybe don't understand, the mechanism, because we're kind of getting too nerdy here.
I'm sorry.
So
that's what I do.
Oh no, hey, that's what I do too. So we're in the right place.
Yep.
The constant force, and because I think the big note too is, as much as there's an active beauty that you're creating here, it's also chronometrically precise.
Absolutely.
Which is a huge point, because most tourbillons, I think, as we know, there's a novelty to it.
Yeah.
No longer really necessary in a day-to-day wear, but you're kind of bypassing that and actually getting some performance in the process.
Yeah, absolutely. So constant force mechanism was developed when you wind up your watch, right? Let's say it's a manual wind watch that has a 48-hour power reserve. When you wind up the watch, it's at its best performance, at a full wind. Then as the 2 days pass, it degrades. And because of that, the amplitude, which affects the accuracy, also degrades.
So as that mainspring is unwinding, like the torque that's winding it up,
you're losing torque and you're losing accuracy, essentially. So a constant force mechanism was created to give constant force to the balance so the amplitude retains its high degree of turn, and in turn you achieve higher accuracy. So the constant force is an amazing mechanism, basically eliminating an issue that's always relevant in mechanical watchmaking. A tourbillon, and I know you know this, but just for the sake of explaining it, it was created for a pocket watch that's always in a vertical position, and when it's resting like that, the effect of gravity is constantly pulling everything downward and affecting also amplitude and accuracy. So by creating a mechanism that is constantly turning the balance wheel, it's essentially evenly distributing the
potential
the weight.
Positional error of what would happen if it was in your pocket.
Yeah, so the vertical positions are essentially compensated by this constantly rotating mechanism. So by creating these two mechanisms in one, we're eliminating basically loss of amplitude because of decrease in torque, and we're also eliminating error from vertical position. And so what's special about ours, because constant force and tourbillon have been done together, as I mentioned earlier, what had not been done is integrating it fully, so there's no intermediate gears or components in between, and by doing that you're eliminating power loss. And the more energy efficient you can make it, the more power you can deliver, which will help in one aspect is delivering longer power reserve, but also keeping the amplitude high and keeping the performance strong. So that and your constant compensation, but also it's all on the same axis.
So you have a single cage, and you have this new mechanism, constant force, that's letting release every second, roughly?
Once per second.
Once per
exactly.
second,
Yes.
and that's slow, gradual extension of the gear train to release that energy in a very precise manner, so it allows it to be extended in its ability to produce or send energy to that balance and assembly.
Yeah, so what happens to the 2 barrels, this one has
Dual
2
barrel.
barrels,
Okay.
yeah. And that's what helps it achieve a 3-day power reserve. The constant force mechanism will run for 50 hours. The barrels can power that for 50 hours. So it passes the energy through the gear train, where then it hits the constant force mechanism, which has an outer carriage. It's 3 arms.
Okay.
And you can see the second hand is indicated by a little jewel at the end of the arm. That winds up a little spring as the tourbillon turns, and as that tourbillon turns, the spring releases and then rewinds. Releases and then rewinds once per second, and does that constantly to help provide that constant force to the tourbillon. And the brilliance of it is just remarkable. The energy efficiency is incredibly high. We also, for the arms of the 2 carriages, because there's an inner carriage for the tourbillon, they're made of titanium to make them ultra lightweight, also helping improve energy.
So you have the center cage, and then there's an outer cage for the actual mechanism for the constant force.
Yeah. So
Understand.
inner cage tourbillon, outer cage is carriage is the constant force.
And then the accuracy, I heard, is it plus or minus half a second a day?
So that was what we're testing. Our testing results
Okay.
from the T0 concept were determined.
Okay.
Right, because of this amazing mechanism. It was incredibly stable rate across this entire testing criteria.
And you're testing this at multiple positions?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So what we're doing is we're taking our Grand Seiko standard, which is like a chronometric performance test, and which is it's a range of 3 to 5 seconds per day. But in reality, the performance of this new mechanism allows for a much higher degree, twice that, let's say, of a conventional escapement with 8 beats. So the other thing that's unique about this too is that it's 8 beats.
Oh, so 28,800 vibrations per hour.
Yeah, so this 4 hertz movement has never been a 4 hertz.
And getting 50 hours of power reserve.
Yeah, well, with the constant force,
Yeah.
and then it runs just as a tourbillon for the remaining balance of the 72 full hours, right? So the constant force mechanism has never been paired with an 8 beat before.
Ah.
So this is the first 8 beat constant force in the world. And higher beat means higher stability and accuracy. So that's higher performance across varying positions, and also more shock resistant, right?
Yeah.
So there's a lot of firsts going on in here, and it really is a privilege to debut this watch at Watches and Wonders. The other side of it too is the designer who developed this, Mr. Kawachia. He used to play guitar. He was a professional musician, like toured the world.
Wonderful.
He's incredible. His backstory is amazing. He decided that he wanted to go into watchmaking after he was done pursuing his musical career, and graduated WOSTEP in Japan, joined us, and then started working on this Constant-Force Tourbillon. And sound was very important to him. So when you listen to the heartbeat of this watch, and we call the watch Koro, because Koro means heartbeat in Japanese. But when you're listening to the beat, it's 8 beats per second and a tick every second for the constant force. So it sounds like a 16th note. And something that's interesting is, the pallet fork, how it bounces back and forth between 2, what they call banking pins. Generally, they're made of brass. Mr. Kawachia decided to replace the brass with titanium, so it's louder and you can hear the heartbeat more clearly.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it's cool stuff.
So, yeah, that was a lot, but I enjoyed that every second of it.
Big nerd out, but that's what I do.
Hey, that's why we're here. I had to have flown here for some reason, right? So, Joe, absolute pleasure. Great job with the new pieces.
Thank you so
love
much.
to do it again, and congrats on the new lineup. But it's great to see you.
Appreciate it. All right, thanks so much.
Thank you.
All right, take care.
Bye-bye.